Without death, where would we be? There's a bunch of idiots in Silicon Valley who are working on the immortality pill. It's not a pill. It's immortality by genetic engineering. Yeah. It's the transhumanists who say we're about to evolve technologically into the next species and we'll be immortal. Mm-hmm. If they ever attain that goal, I think that would be the end of the world. I don't think God would allow a world of immortals to exist. That would be hell incarnate. We would be like a dozen eggs left on your kitchen table for 6 months. We would go rotten.
Yeah.
Death is absolutely necessary.
I heard a story, it was a science fiction story, you may have heard of it, I'm not sure where it's from. He was, this astronaut was on a planet and the ship broke down and he had 2 pills. One was for suicide and the one was to live forever. And so because he was stuck on this planet, no way out, he chose to kill himself. But he took the wrong pill and then he had to sit there alone forever.
That sounds like a short story by Ursula Le Guin, entitled...
Or it was a canister or something.
Those Who Walk Away From... And then there's some foreign word that begins with an O, like Ormulan. There's this ideal society on another planet in which everybody's happy. No problems, no poverty, no prejudice. And some of them discover that the reason for their happiness is that there's one little girl who's constantly tortured inside a little building outside the city. Jesus. And her horrible physical and spiritual screams are transformed by this machine into good energy and pumped into all the other millions of people. So their happiness depends upon her misery.
I got to read this story.
And some say, I cannot endure this, and I'm going out into the wilderness to live normally. And some say this is utopia, and they stay there.
Yeah.
So implicitly it says, what do you choose?
Yeah, this is the consequentialist argument, right?
Yep.
Or the utilitarian argument. Yep. Yeah. What do you think the best argument, or not just the best argument for God's existence, because there might be something that's more convincing, but convincing can be relative. What do you like? If somebody said to you, sitting on an airplane, Peter, why should I believe in God?
If you're talking purely logically, I think the best argument for God is Aquinas' 5 ways, the cosmological argument. Mm-hmm. All the intelligence, all the intelligibility in the universe, the greater the scientist, the more he approaches a kind of a theism, like Einstein. If you're talking about the human side, I would say the moral argument. You can't be a saint without God. I love Albert Camus. He was a reluctant atheist, and I love his hero, Dr. Roux, in The Plague, who, like Camus, couldn't believe in God, and he stays to help these people with the plague. He's the only doctor around. He knows he's going to catch the plague and he's going to die. And they ask him why, and he says, well, I don't know the meaning of life except that the meaning of life is to be a saint. And I can't believe in God, and I know you can't be a saint without God. And one of those 3 propositions has to be false, and I can't reject either one, so I'm just confused. That's good, honest atheism.
Do you find that your students are more kind of inward-looking as opposed to sort of, so rather than Aquinas' cosmological arguments, beginning from facts in the world that we know about, looking inward?
Yeah, that's typical of the modern mind in the good sense as well as the bad sense of the word, yeah. For instance, Cardinal Newman's new version of the moral argument, instead of starting with an objective natural law, which all societies believed in, and we don't for the first time, he starts with private conscience. Do you believe that we all have our own law? You have your 10 commandments, I have mine, different strokes for different folks. Yeah, I'm a moral relativist, fine. Do you believe that it's ever wrong for you individually to violate your own private conscience? To do something that you honestly believe is morally reprehensible? Of course not. Why? Where did that authority come from?
Yeah.
Is conscience just an accident of evolution? Is it just your parents' word? Is it just society's consensus? Why do you bow down to that as if it were a prophet from God? That's a very good argument.
Yeah.
It might lead you into Raskolnikov or Ivan Karamazov.
Yeah.
You know, there's no God, therefore everything is permissible. But more likely, it'll lead you, well, I can't say that I shouldn't be a saint, and therefore I'll have to believe in God. But my simplest argument for the existence of God is Jesus. If God doesn't exist, Jesus is the biggest fool who ever lived.
He wasn't the biggest fool that ever lived, therefore God exists.
Of course.
Yeah. I think it's an argument for God's existence. It isn't. Do you want to talk about that?
Of course. It's addressed to the skeptic. It's worthless for the believer. He has better arguments. But the skeptic wants, because he's human, two things. He wants truth, he wants happiness. And he thinks that the truth is not ascertainable. Neither theism nor atheism can be proved. So he has to bet on the red chips instead of the blue chips, on happiness instead of truth. All right. How can you attain the happiness that you want but don't get? We all have a lover's quarrel with the world. This world is not enough. There is suffering. There is death.
Amen.
I want more than that. I'm not sure what it is, but I want something more than that. The only chance of getting that is, one, God and heaven exist, and two, you buy into that. You accept his offer. That combination is your only chance of attaining happiness. So why not buy into it?
Now, of course, the Pascal's wager would only kind of get off the ground if I think that the arguments for, or the likelihood of, God and atheism are equal.
Right.
If I think there's better arguments for atheism, I might just choose to be an atheist.
Right.
Because I have people who come up to me quite regularly who say, I've looked at all the arguments, I've been watching all the YouTube videos, I really don't know what to do, both seem convincing one day or the other. Before I've had my coffee, I'm an atheist, but what do I do? And so I know Pascal said something after that, though, didn't he? He said, so suppose you bet on God, and then he tells us what to do.
He imagines his interlocutor saying, I just can't make the leap of faith.
Yeah.
Can't do it. So Pascal says, well, you don't need more arguments. You need to live it.
Yes.
Here's a suit of clothes. Put it on. See what it feels like. Go to church. Light some candles. Go to Mass. Use holy water.
And what do you
Love
say?
your neighbor.
What do you say to the person who says, "But if I do that, I'm a hypocrite"?
No, you're not. You're not buying the car yet. You're just test driving it.
Yeah. And of course, if God doesn't exist, there's probably nothing wrong with being a hypocrite. So that's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you can't prove or disprove that God exists, then there's no conclusive proof either way, and you're not a fool. Nobody can prove that you're a fool, whichever way you choose. That's when he shifts from the mind to the heart. And the heart's at least as important as the mind. God made us to demand two things, truth and happiness. Unless your happiness is just comfort and contentment. If you can say, oh, well, I'm just contented with 3 good meals a day and no terrible pain, that's all I want.
That's what the beasts desire, though.
Yeah. And deep down, you know that's not you.
Yeah.
But nobody else can tell you that. You have to search your own heart and realize that that's not going to make you happy.
Now, did you find that there was an uptick in atheists in your class during the new atheism thing that went on with Dawkins and the rest of them? Now that seems to have died down. What's been going on?
No, but I think Boston College is not typical.
Ah.
I think most of the kids there come from a vaguely Catholic or vaguely religious background. And they tend to be kind of pragmatic. They're in college to get a good job and make a lot of money, not to find whether God exists or not. And the students that come to my courses are usually much more motivated for the big questions than the average student.
Are they? Well, yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully, yeah. They would have, obviously, intellectual curiosity, presumably, if they're taking philosophy.
Yeah.
And then have you taught master students? And
doctor students,
have
yeah.
you? Yeah.
Yep. BC is one of the, I think, 2% of universities in America that still require 2 philosophy courses for every student.
Yeah.
Philosophy is not that popular anymore.
Why? Have we replaced it with psychology?
No, we've replaced it with technology. 99.4% of all research and development money in American universities goes to the STEM courses. 0.6% go to all the arts and all the humanities combined. We're becoming technocrats.
And why is that an issue? Why is that a problem, would you say to them?
Because if you don't know yourself, which is what philosophy does, you don't know who's using all these things and becoming so powerful and the master of the world.
That's right.
And that's worthless.
It reminds me of Augustine's comment about going throughout the world and seeing mountains and passing by himself without caring to know.
Nobody on his deathbed said, you know, I spent too little time working on this problem of how to make more efficient drains and too much time worrying about who I am and what's the meaning of my life.
Yeah.
Nobody ever said that.
Do you think we don't think about death enough?
Of course we don't. If you do, that makes you lively.
If you think about death,
people who have near-death experiences always take life more seriously
and
appreciate it more. Because we're fools. We appreciate things only by contrast. In heaven, you won't need evil to appreciate good, but here we do. And we need suffering to appreciate joy, and we need death to appreciate life. So if your first thought in the morning is, I might die today, in light of that, how shall I live? That improves your life.
Yeah. Yo, thanks for watching. You can watch the entire episode on YouTube if you want. You can listen to it at The Matt Fradd Show by subscribing on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And feel free to support me, patreon.com/Matt Fradd.